Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Does your warehouse waste time and money managing forklift batteries? Enersys can energize your operations with a customized solution, delivering the power you need while minimizing ownership costs. Enersys starts by analyzing your operations and then selecting from their comprehensive range of battery and charger technologies, develops a truly optimized system tailored to your needs. Enersys gives you the power to increase productivity and profitability. See how Enersys puts power in motion for you at enersys.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Evan Hertafeld, and he is the CTO at A2Z Drone Delivery. And we're going to talk about A2Z Drone Delivery and drone deliveries in general, how that's looking in terms of when we'll be seeing drones flying around with packages and dropping them off in our front yards, and talking about what that looks like too from a warehousing perspective as well. And, you know, does that change the way warehouses look? How do warehouses kind of operate if they're going to be utilizing drones and things of that nature? So, Evan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm really excited to explore this angle with you. I think we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about.
Definitely, absolutely, and I'm very interested to talk about this as well. I think it's a topic that's becoming more and more talked about and getting closer to, I guess, reality, we might say, in a sense, but it's certainly something that we haven't talked about in the podcast. We've talked about drones in the warehouse for doing inventory counting and things like that, but certainly not on the delivery side. So before we kind of dive deep into it, why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of A2Z Drone Delivery and what it is you guys actually are bringing to the market?
Yeah, of course. So we are a technology provider for the drone delivery and logistics space. So we manufacture hardware that our customers then can bring out into the field. So that gives us a real good bird's eye view into a bunch of different industries. So we're not necessarily tied to, a particular use case. We build the tech. We listen to our customers, see what's working, what's not, where people are using it that we would have never dreamed of, and then kind of optimizing our tech to suit where we see the industry going. So our core technology centers around one of our very first products, which was the industry's first commercial-grade delivery winch, which means it's basically a gizmo. You can strap it to any drone big enough to carry it that lets it hold packages and deliver them from up in the air, up to 100 feet. It lowers it down on a string, safely delivers it to the ground, automates and monitors the delivery. So essentially, if you can get your drone, 100 feet above where you want that box to be, you just hit a button and it drops it off. Since now started making our own drones that obviously are compatible with our winch technology and exploring other spaces as well.
Very interesting. And, I think that when people think the average consumer is thinking that, drones are going to be dropping packages off to them, I think, the idea is that, the drone's going to land on their porch or something, right? So I'm curious, why did you have the idea or think to go in the direction of utilizing a winch to lower that package down instead of bringing the drone, I guess, closer to the target?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's because most people don't want a drone landing on your porch. When we think about, current drones they're camera drones. I don't think a lot of people are properly envisioning the size of a vehicle big enough to deliver, any substantially sized package. These things are kind of big. definitely bigger than what most drones today that people are familiar with look like, just because most people aren't seeing delivery drones out and about. These things are loud, and their propellers spinning very fast. If something goes wrong, that you can, those can do some damage to people, to property. Plus, most of them have to have cameras just to be able to navigate safely and make that delivery. But then, now this thing's got a camera hanging out by my window. That's a weird look. So there's a lot of concerns that come down to drones getting really up into people's houses, and a lot of those concerns go away if that drone never has to get within 100 feet of a house or a person or a dog or a window.
Very interesting, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think there is like a lot of uncertainty, like you mentioned, like with the regular consumer, like what does a drone actually look like? And like you mentioned, the camera drone is probably the most familiar with, and I have one that's like very, very small, like almost like a coaster size, right? So, obviously having to carry something with a lot of weight and a package is going to be a lot larger. So it's very interesting, that approach, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So before we get more into like the details of how the delivery works and things like that, I'm curious, because I think a lot of other people are curious too, is, how far off are we, and like where are we on this, I guess, evolution of having drones actually dropping packages off in our front yard? I mean, is this something that's happening now? And if so, tell us about it, and what are some of the challenges to getting it further expanded?
Yeah, well, I will say it is happening now. There are people in the world who are ordering stuff on an app from familiar retailers and getting them dropped off via drone in their house. Those people happen to be close to the pilot projects of a lot of the major players. Okay. It's not widespread in that like many major cities have it, but it's going on. It's happening successfully. It's happening safely. I know like Walmart's doing it. Google Wing is doing it. I know Amazon has a new vehicle. I don't know if that is doing commercial delivery just yet, but it's absolutely happening. The impediments are cost and regulation. So essentially, there's a lot of red tape that you have to run through in order to be able to fly a drone. And the more widespread your operations are, the more the FAA has to be involved, and the more certifications are required. So you essentially need to, if you want to fly, one huge sort of stopper for a lot of these is the need to remain within line of sight of your vehicle for most cases, which obviously if you're trying to go several miles out, you can't really do that. Yeah. There is a lengthy certification process akin to basically getting an airplane certified for a commercial flight. It's a similar process. You have to do that process for your drone in order to be legally allowed to fly it beyond a place where a pilot or visual observer can see it. And not a lot of people have done that, just because it takes a long time and you have to freeze your hardware. You have to say, hey, here's my design. You undergo many years of processing and inspection, and then you get your stamp. But oftentimes by that time, the technology has changed and now your design is a little bit out of date, which is why a lot of are reticent to go through that. So just in general, it takes a lot of expertise and time and paperwork and resources to even be allowed to go and do this commercial delivery for most widespread operations in the consumer delivery space. And then the other one is cost. So everyone talks about the potential of low-cost deliveries for drone delivery, and it's there. There is potential in the right operation for these to be quite cost-efficient. But there are a lot of barriers to reaching such an operation, and to my knowledge, no one is there. Basically, to get a cost-effective drone delivery operation, you need a level of scale that we don't see just yet. You need a level of commodification of hardware such that your vehicles are very cheap to produce that we just don't see yet. You need a level of automation that removes as many human pilots and operators as possible, often expensive expertise right now. And you need a sizable market to address. So all of those things are very possible, and we see them on the horizon, but no one has yet put them all together. So right now, it's and there's the development. We need to get far enough away from the development of the system itself that we pay for that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of engineering that just goes into these vehicles and automation systems and software. So, right now people are able to do it, but people are mostly doing it with, extra money and optimism that it will reach a cost-effective point in the future.
Yeah, very interesting. And I would say from, my perspective, like the biggest hurdle is probably the regulations itself. I mean, I think the cost is something that can always get figured out, and obviously investment and things like that can help to scale to get to there. But the regulations certainly are a challenge. Now, you guys recently did a deployment in Florida, so tell us about, I guess, how that kind of came about, and is Florida a more drone friendly state, or when we talk about the regulations, I mean how did that happen, and what does that kind of rollout look like?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as a lot of there was a lot of disasters striking certain areas of Florida because of Hurricane Ian, and so we saw that as an opportunity to help out a bit.
Right.
So we've sent a drone over there and partnered with an operator, Zing Drones. So we have our tech with their expertise down there, essentially looking for ways for us to be of help. And how that's manifested is we are ferrying meals to an island whose bridge was destroyed and is still coming back online and not back at full capacity. Residents aren't able to use the bridge more than a couple times a week. And it turns out people eat more than a couple times a week. So, we're basically shuttling in meals. And, we obviously, the core mission is a humanitarian one. It also does give us good opportunity to explore this use case and see how good are our drones at these situations where we are given a little bit more leeway in sort of these, more emergent situations. We partnered with the sheriff's department and a lot of people doing aid there who are, finding ways to waive a lot of the legal requirements that often come in this territory because the need is high and we're here, we're not trying to, make a buck. We just, people want to help people. And so, so it's a way for us to chart a course in this area and feed some hungry people who are maybe stuck on an island.
Yeah, and I think that's a really noble thing that you guys are doing, obviously, by helping out there. My mother is actually down there and was there during the hurricane, so she told me all about everything that was going on and, all the places familiar with that are, not there or only half there and things of that nature. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a great thing to see. And I think it's a really incredible application for that type of system and delivery system that you guys are offering to be able to do something like that and get to places that are not necessarily easily accessible by our traditional modes of transportation, right?
Exactly.
So do you think that will translate in a sense, like if we look at, I guess, drone delivery, we're talking in this use case about, a place that is not really accessible because of a natural disaster and, the bridge being out and things like that. But do you think that drone delivery applies to, it's a better application for more remote deliveries or more deliveries in more densely populated areas? Where do you think that it translates the best?
Yeah, that good old-fashioned answer, it depends. you are an e-commerce business looking to scale and address a big market, you want to be in a crowded area simply because the current range of these systems is such that your limiting factor for addressable market is going to be delivery radius. There are a lot of vehicles that can fly a lot farther, and they're a little earlier on. Most of what we're seeing in this space are the kind of old-fashioned quadcopters who are using, pushing air down to get lift instead of using wings, which is a lot more efficient.
Right.
But using those wings for more efficient flight introduces a lot of aerodynamic and logistical constraints when it comes to actually carrying a package and lowering it from the air. So a lot of trade-offs there. So generally, if you want scale, you're going to be in a small place. Or excuse me, you're going to be in a small delivery area with more people in it. But I think that while a lot of people think about commercial package delivery to neighborhoods as like the thing that delivery drones are going to be doing, and perhaps that is true in the future, there are ripe applications now that don't necessarily require that kind of scale to generate value. And that would be, remote deliveries certainly in disaster relief situations or even search and rescue applications is key. That's maybe someone's going to pay $5 to deliver a sack of toilet paper, but when you think about like the cost of a human life or being able to find people like 5 minutes, 15 minutes before something bad happens can be huge. If you can get someone medicine, get someone a walkie-talkie, get somebody water, or even just you could ferry somebody back, if they're really in an inaccessible place, you can essentially ferry them life-supporting goods, water and food, while more actual extraction tech or personnel arrives. So definitely there are lots of applications that don't require a huge market that can prosper in more spread out remote areas. Another thing to consider is site to site for, say, hospitals, remote hospitals as well. If a government or hospital would certainly have incentive to pay for a program that can get them organs and medicine much quicker than traditional ground infrastructure in an area where that infrastructure is lacking.
Yeah, I think all those use cases make a ton of sense, and I can really see it in the immediate, having that like you guys are doing in Florida, playing a critical role in delivering something that people need like right away. That's an emergency is necessary for people to survive, right? But when we look at the roadmap, I guess, for drone delivery in a sense, and the kind of the growth over the next couple years, and we look at those areas where you mentioned people are going to see more scale and get more benefit as a business, right, to deliver to more densely populated areas. Do you see, do we look at like the city of the future, and I'm on the 35th floor of an office building in New York or LA or Philly or something like that, and I look out the window and there's drones flying by that are delivering some type of package or meal or something like that. Do you think that's where we're heading? Is that a reality? Because if I look at the drone delivery, aside from the costs and the regulations and things you mentioned earlier, I look at a city, and I feel like the city presents like the most challenges because there's like the most obstacles in the sky, right? How do you feel about that? And I guess how does A2Z kind of view that situation?
Yeah, there are certainly a lot of challenges, but I would disagree, and I would say the sky has perhaps the fewest physical obstacles compared to the ground, and that's why we'll see it used.
I guess let me clarify. I meant obstacles within the city, right? So like skyscrapers and things like that, like different variations of, like you have a building that's 70 stories tall or whatever next to a building that's maybe like 5 or 6 stories, and just that variation. That's what I meant by obstacles in the sky. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Cameras and navigation systems are getting pretty advanced. I think from like physically getting around and not slamming into things is not a huge problem for these systems. A lot of work going into this, a lot of, both on the sensor side and the algorithmic side in figuring out how aerial vehicles can avoid, stationary obstacles and other drones, whether or not those drones are being, quote unquote cooperative or not. So I think that's certainly on the horizon. As to when, I can't say. I think we will see some resistance. We can liken it to self-driving cars.
Yeah.
It's a big battle between the risks and the opportunities. And right now, the risks outweigh the opportunities. There's regulatory costs to actually doing it, and the technology that exists today probably, couldn't scale immediately to be a, future sci-fi delivery system. But the risks are only going to get smaller, and the opportunities will only get greater. And so at some point, there will be a point where it just makes sense. And we're starting to see that in smaller communities, and I think there's no reason it won't happen. From a fundamental perspective, there's these huge swaths of open space unused by transit, and there's a whole bunch. There's traffic jams. People just plotting circuitous routes to avoid traffic or sitting in standstill traffic jams. Opening up the air is it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
There are certainly lots of challenges in the way, but I don't think many in the industry doubt that it will eventually be much more common than it is today to see things flying around in public spaces.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see, and I think it makes sense, like you're saying, to reduce congestion and be able to move up into the air, right? Because we've been so grounded, so to speak, there. But I think it doesn't make total sense, and it'd be interesting to see how the systems and the technology develops alongside the regulations, and how cities or towns or states as a whole start to work with drone companies to be able to bring these things and make them happen. I think it'd be interesting to see, like, where do we see those types of things? Because I know even like my dad got a drone for Christmas, right, for a Christmas gift, and he lives down the road from an Air Force base, and we start to help him set it up, and we're looking at it, and it's like, oh, we can't fly it in the backyard, like, because we're too close to the Air Force base. Like, well, we got to go to the park or something, right? So it's something that you didn't even realize, right? It's just like a regular consumer, but it'd be interesting to see how that works, and how communities and government works together with the companies to figure that out. So now on the shipping point and the distribution side, we are the New Warehouse podcast, right? So we got to touch on the warehouse aspect. So we talked about the delivery aspect, but as these drones evolve and this becomes like a more widely adopted delivery mode and transportation mode for packages and parcels, what will like a warehouse that's utilizing drones for delivery start to look like, and what is that like shipping point, the takeoff point, I guess maybe you would call it, look like, and will existing warehouses be able to make changes to do that, or will it have to be like standalone facilities that are just deploying these drones? How does that really look?
Yeah, I think you've actually, I believe you've got it backwards. I think the warehouses will be pioneering a lot of this stuff. I think the warehouse is a very ripe space for exploring and incubating drone delivery technology, both on the hardware and automation side, because it presents a number of fortuitous characteristics. The first of which is that you, as a warehouse manager, have full control of your space indoors.
Right.
You can fly a drone in your warehouse. There will be an operator who can see the thing, and regulatorily, you have so much fewer in your way to someone who's trying to deliver to a residence. So one of the huge, regulatory, done. And you can realize a lot of value with a small drone system in a warehouse as opposed to what you need for consumer delivery. If you're trying to profit from a consumer delivery drone operation, then you need the delivery fees to pay for your, drone, and you're flying very far and the stuff you're carrying is not yours. If you're in a warehouse, time is money. And if you have a machine that's down, that's expensive downtime. That downtime is more than enough to justify a solution that can get the thing back up and running in a matter of minutes instead of hours by getting parts to somebody who needs it. This is definitely an area of business we are seeing a lot of interest in, and where I think a lot of the early work is going to be to get the automation to a point where it is ready to go out into the public sector. I guess I was more to utilizing drone delivery within a warehouse than I was talking about warehouses plugging into a commercial drone delivery. So I can speak to that as well if you like.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I guess I didn't even think about that aspect. I mean, I've had a couple companies on the podcast, like Aware and Gather AI, to talk about how using drones like for inventory management and things of that nature. But I didn't think about, the idea of being able to transport things within the warehouse utilizing drones. So, I mean, are you seeing people are trying that now or doing that now currently?
Yeah. Yes. Your floor space is wildly busy, like planned to a T.
Right.
And it's inevitable that there will be things that need to get places that don't necessarily have a direct route. Like one of our customers, currently they have like a little golf cart that drives around to drop off parts when stuff goes down. But we're now working with them to put in basically, a point-to-point drone that can just go over everything, have either, go right to the machine or have a few designated drop points around the facility, and you just saving on downtime. So mostly it would be like parts and tools to an operator. And so that's, just any in a logistic operation, you'll have a thing here and it needs to be there, and it needs to be there fast. And you've got, many warehouses are so tall, there's just the entire upper third of them is completely unutilized. And there's, cameras and sensors that can do a very good job of navigating even without GPS signal.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and you're making me think, because I'm thinking about my days as a warehouse manager in big facilities, and having to just get like a special document or something to to a department, and could have saved me a lot of steps, right, and a lot of questions walking along the way too. So very interesting. So now, from the perspective of the warehouse being out product utilizing a drone, would the drone be able to just go in an existing facility and like fly out a dock door, or would you need a special setup? Like what would that look like?
That would really depend on kind of the nature of the package. So there's no reason that you couldn't just load a package on a drone and fly it on out. Basically you'd want to make sure that you've got a clear path out the warehouse, and of all the sort of regulatory concerns that I discussed about commercial delivery in general would certainly apply as soon as that thing leaves your warehouse. But a lot of opportunity to double dip too on your you've got your logistics drones and your delivery drones, and those might look pretty similar depending on what you're using them for and how far you're trying to go. So basically instead of loading it up into a truck, you'd attach it to a drone, and the thing would go to an address and drop it off. So early on, you would have, if it's the first time visiting a residence, you'd probably want a person there to make sure that there's a clear spot for it to deliver to. And but once you've been to a place, what we're seeing a lot of people do is essentially have a catalog of recipients and delivery destinations. So like you would know, oh, hey, for this address, I'm not just going to like go to the, whatever Google Maps point. I have the exact lat long that puts me right, where I can get through these trees to this nice spot on the yard. And that's where you then kind of go moving forward, and your automation can kind of take care of that for you. Definitely a big thing to think about would be the physical package interface to the drone.
Okay.
Like for our current systems are mostly designed to be hand loaded. So you'd either need to have someone who can attach the package to the drone and off it goes, or potentially, design or, down the road, you'd have something that can actually interface it with some kind of machine.
Very interesting. And it's a ton to think about. And, obviously I think it's still such a young space, right, in development. So there's a lot to take in there, and a lot to unpack as well, and be able to understand how this can grow, and certainly a lot of different applications too. And I think it's really interesting the insights you shared here today, and kind of helping us to understand like where where is drone delivery at now, and where is it going, and how can we utilize drones in some different ways too, even like, internally deliveries within our facilities, I think is really, really interesting stuff, and has kind of opened my eyes a little more to, I guess, seeing what can potentially happen and what may happen in the future too. So Evan, I want to thank you for coming on the show today and talking to us about this. It was a really interesting topic. If people want to learn more about A2Z Drone Delivery and what it is you guys do, how can they do that?
You can come right on over to our website, A2ZDroneDelivery.com. You can take a look at our products and then reach out and get in touch. Or you can just shoot me an email, Evan at A2Z Drone Delivery. Yeah, and I want to say it's been great to be on here. This is definitely a sector we'd love to get some ears. If you have a warehouse, if you are interested in logistics and have cool ideas for us to try, cool applications, like we would love to hear from the folks on the ground who know this space back to front and can see the opportunities that maybe we can't from where we're sitting. So a pleasure to reach your crowd. Definitely a lot of smart people out there who I'm sure have had a lot of good ideas listening to what we've been talking about.
All right, thank you for that, and definitely, I think the audience thanks you as well for calling them smart. I'm sure they appreciate that. So thank you so much, Evan, for coming on the show today, and we'll definitely put more information about A2Z Drone Delivery at thenewwarehouse.com as well, and I'm sure we'll be checking in later on to see how the drone delivery space is evolving. So thank you once again for your time on the show today, Evan.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.